Once I've read a script, I'll definitely start to pull imagery. I have a huge library that I've collected ever since high school, photographic books and everything. With this film, it was slightly different because I had never read a script like Quentin's, which reads more like a novel.
While closer to 8:30, Rick and Cliff went to the Valley Mexican restaurant landmark Casa Vega on Ventura.
A lot of problems you have, obviously, in films is being able to clear art. And in some of the restaurants, they didn't know who the artist was, or there was no way to find the artist to clear the art. So we had to switch out. But we also looked at, we had so much research on this that we looked at what that was on the walls at that time. The other thing that was unusual in this restaurant is that the tables have been here for so long, and they were originally sunk into the ground in concrete. So you can't take you can take the table top off, but you can't get rid of the stem. So we had to really work on that. Luckily, because this is one of Quentin's favorite restaurants and has been all of his life, they know him well here. I mean, this is his family. Same with El Coyote. It was kind of easier to communicate with him because we both grew up here. We both knew the city, of how the visuals of what we could find now and visuals of what we should be trying to grab, memories. As he would always say, we're not making a documentary, we're making a movie in 1969, which is an interesting difference of what that means. It's what people remember. It's Peach's record store, which actually, opened maybe just a little after but he said so what? When he was looking for 60s, he loved kind of what we had done with the Doors. I thought then, at the time of the Doors, it was difficult enough to kind of put facades back on, but there was still enough structure, like the Strip still was the Strip. You just had to kind of put Gazzari's facade back on and across the street. But now you couldn't do any of that. Really the whiskey's there, and then everything on both sides of the whiskey is completely modernized. What's amazing is how fast things were being torn down right before we shot. As we scouted, it was like the location guy would, Rick would say to me, I'm so sorry, but that's going to be demoed in 2 weeks. It's like, what? It's that fast. LA is, it never has been a preservation city, but it's surprising how quickly in the last 2 years it has transformed itself. We couldn't shoot things like the Chinese because they've so modernized and torn the towers off in the front. But the one thing we both, and I remembered vividly, is that remember where you parked in this gigantic parking lot with the biggest poster in the world. They did these mega posters of what was playing in the theater. So at least what we could do was recreate that somewhere else so that you got that, kind of the Chinese, but from a car's point of view. There's no more parking lots that you can make a left-hand turn in Hollywood. We had to go to downtown, found one parking lot that we could recreate and redo the walls. And it's funny, the odd things that were the hardest things to do. Quentin is one of the great collectors of all time. Once the set was dressed, Quentin would come in and, he'd see it a couple of days before and he'd say, okay, I got a couple things I'm going to bring because, that I think that would be perfect for the character. And he'd take a box out of the back of his car, or we'd have a saddle, and he says, I got a saddle that would be really good. For him, the vision of Leo in the pool, the camera being able to make a move up from him in the pool, come over a tree, and see Sharon and Polanski come out of the house and get no car. And to him, that was key. That was so key. So I said, okay, well, we're going to see what we get. And look, it was months, locations of looking. First on Google Maps to kind of find that relationship of what you needed was one house a little higher than the other. And then what you also needed was the pool looking at a view, because that's what Benedict Canyon was about. And then tying that location, those two, the facade, the front of his house, the front of her house, the inside of her house, then the backyard was at the real house, but the inside of the house we put on stage because it was so much choreography that we would have had to, tear a house apart. But we used the real pool at the real house, so we made on the stage a miniature of that pool, and then we used part of our street as the beginning of CLO, and then used the real CLO to be able to have the cars come back and forth and exit. So it became really 4 locations to get that one. How could you not love this, the idea of every new thing you do is a completely new set of rules and inventions, and, design is just, your head never stops. The excitement of thinking of things and of how each script responds to something else is, in this case, the uniqueness of this will be very hard to beat afterwards.